Distinguished speakers and participants, good morning and good afternoon to all of you. I'm sorry I'm unable to participate in this conference in person owing to a prior commitment, but I'm pleased to be able to do so via a pre-recorded session and to share some thoughts on the important topic of regulatory agilities in the time of COVID-19 and beyond. My sharing is based on HSA's experience in supporting the Singapore government in managing the COVID-19 pandemic and in working with the international regulatory community during the pandemic. HSA is the National Health Products Regulatory Authority in Singapore. We regulate medicines, vaccines, medical devices, and other health-related products. We approve health products only if they meet the required safety, quality, and efficacy standards. We continue to monitor their safety profile post-market entry. And when we come across any safety concerns, we will take the necessary actions to mitigate the risks. In some instances, we will even withdraw unsafe or defective health products from the market. During a pandemic, regulators cannot adopt a business-as-usual approach. We must work much more quickly while still maintaining robust safety, quality, and efficacy standards. The speed and scale of the COVID-19 pandemic made life even more challenging for regulators. At HSA, we deliberately adopted risk-calibrated regulatory flexibility and agility. This gave us the bandwidth to continue performing our critical functions smoothly while taking on the new work to provide timely access to urgently needed COVID-19 diagnostics, medicines, and vaccines. Let me now highlight some key measures that HSA took, which I think should be sustained and refined to sharpen regulatory responses for managing future public health emergencies. COVID-19 diagnostics, medicines, and vaccines were developed at an unprecedented and highly accelerated pace. So one major regulatory challenge we faced was to obtain timely, adequate, high-quality scientific, technical, and clinical information to enable rigorous regulatory assessments and decisions. We had to have sufficient data in the context of a pandemic to ensure reasonable product safety, performance, and quality assurance, while carefully managing the risks related to facilitating speedy access, including putting in place the appropriate safeguards. HSA recognized that if we had used our normal registration routes and regulatory requirements, the Singapore population and healthcare system would not have had timely access to urgently needed COVID-19 health products. So we had to speed up the availability of the health products required for public health surveillance and control measures. Hence, we quickly developed and introduced the Pandemic Special Access Route, or PSA for short, to facilitate early access to critical novel vaccines, medicines, and medical devices during a pandemic. A key feature of PSA is that companies can only apply to HSA for PSA authorization for designated health products that the Singapore government prioritizes. This feature ensures that HSA's limited regulatory resources are optimally utilized to evaluate critical health products which the government needs during a pandemic. Another key feature of PSA is that it allows HSA to accept a rolling submission of data for review from the early stages of clinical studies and as more data becomes available on a real-time basis. PISA facilitated Singapore to be the first in Asia to authorize the use of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine in December 2020 and the Moderna one in February 2021. In the PISA framework, we put in place an important safeguard measure. Post-PISA authorization, companies must still submit more data from ongoing safety and efficacy studies to HSA as soon as they become available. This allows us to ensure that the benefits of using these products continues to outweigh the risks. Outcome-wise, we achieve faster market entry to fulfill urgent healthcare needs during the pandemic, while still having the ability to withdraw the PISA authorization if the additional data shows that the benefits no longer outweigh the risks. Another key innovation during the pandemic was our use of virtual inspections of manufacturing, importing, and wholesaling facilities. Within a month after the pandemic hit Singapore, HSA started virtual inspections in place of on-site ones. HSA successfully ensured that good manufacturing and distribution standards were maintained at all existing manufacturing and warehouse facilities. HSA was also able to continue approving new manufacturing, importing, and wholesaling facilities throughout the pandemic. Using virtual inspections, HSA helped 34 local companies to set up surgical mask manufacturing facilities in Singapore. This was in response to shortages in surgical mask supply due to global supply chain disruptions and export bans. HSA inspected these new local facilities using virtual desktop audits and helped ensure a consistent supply of quality surgical masks in Singapore throughout the pandemic. As part of overall efforts to enable early access to novel COVID-19 products, HSA supported product innovation and facilitated the approval of clinical trials in Singapore. We also stepped up our provision of early scientific regulatory advice to researchers and companies to facilitate their progress in developing COVID-19 products. Another important measure that we took was to publish a guidance document on the conduct of clinical trials in relation to the COVID-19 pandemic, which we can apply in future pandemics. This guidance accelerated the adoption of digital technologies as part of our efforts to facilitate virtual clinical trials amidst hospital visit restrictions. As COVID-19 vaccines were PISA authorized in a pandemic using less data than normal registration routes in normal times, HSA recognized the need for us to implement a very robust post-market monitoring framework for these vaccines. So we put in place additional monitoring measures to ensure that the benefits of these vaccines outweigh the risks. One new measure was our introduction of an active surveillance program. It allowed HSA to access more data to carry out a robust analysis, which we then used for signal detection and strengthening. It also allowed us to use real-world data to monitor the safety of the vaccines in a near real-time basis. HSA further enhanced our post-market monitoring system through the use of expert panels for case adjudication and causality assessment. Cases requiring adjudication are the more complex ones. HSA also then discussed these adjudicated cases with the Expert Committee on COVID-19 Vaccines, or EC19V for short. This is the committee that makes the recommendations on vaccination strategies and identifies the subgroups to be vaccinated or prioritized for vaccination. As the vaccines were being rolled out to almost the entire population, we knew that there would be intense public scrutiny and attention on their safety. So we had to be transparent and inform the public about any safety signals detected in order to help maintain public confidence in the national vaccination program. We did so by publishing monthly safety updates on COVID-19 vaccines from May 2021 to March 2022. Once most of the eligible population had completed the primary series of vaccination and the incidences of the reported adverse events had stabilized, we moved on to a more simplified report on key updates published on a quarterly basis. And in addition, for the very first time, we asked individuals to self-report their own adverse events to us. This helped HSA to obtain a sense of the general safety profile of the COVID-19 vaccines being deployed in the general population and to detect any unusual trends. While the international regulatory community had strong international regulatory collaborations already taking place before the pandemic, the scale of the collaborations accelerated during this pandemic and was very helpful to all regulatory participants. One, we shared critical information in a timely manner. Two, we either work shared or used the reliance model. That is, we leveraged on the assessment reports of other regulators to speed up country-specific regulatory assessments and decisions. Three, we worked together to harmonize regulatory requirements to the extent legally possible so that critical COVID-19 products could be brought to market quickly. All regulators participated actively, sharing scientific contributions, regulatory perspectives, and challenges in an effort to achieve greater global regulatory alignment and efficiencies. As we move into an endemic COVID-19 environment and return to normalcy, I trust that the lessons we have learned will help us to remain agile and flexible and to be better prepared should a future pandemic occur. Today's conference is an excellent opportunity for all stakeholders to exchange perspectives and connect with one another. I wish everyone a fruitful discussion.